So there I was, standing in the middle of what used to be the Galactic Senate's most prestigious assembly hall, watching approximately 12,000 alien delegates flee like their collective asses were on fire. Which, considering the circumstances, wasn't entirely inaccurate. The name's Captain Daniel "Danny" Reeves, and before you ask, no, I didn't plan on becoming humanity's last hope. Hell, I didn't even plan on getting out of bed this morning. But here we are, and apparently the universe has a twisted sense of humor. The irony wasn't lost on me. 3 hours ago, these same delegates were arguing about trade routes and mining rights with the passion of suburban moms fighting over the last organic avocado. Now they were stampeding toward the exits like someone had announced a flash sale at the galaxy's most exclusive boutique. "Captain Reeves?" came a voice that sounded like gravel being processed through a cement mixer. I turned to see Ambassador Crix-9, one of the few beings still remaining in the rapidly emptying chamber. His species, the Volthani, looked like someone had taken a praying mantis, fed it nothing but protein powder for 6 months, then given it a law degree. "Perhaps you should reconsider your position." I couldn't help but chuckle. "Reconsider? Crix, buddy, I'm not even sure I understand my position yet. Want to fill me in on what's got everyone's carapaces in a twist?" The Volthani's compound eyes shifted nervously, a sight that would have been comical if the situation weren't so spectacularly screwed. "The Devourer Fleet has crossed into our sector. Preliminary estimates suggest they number in the hundreds of thousands, possibly millions. Every military strategist in the galaxy agrees. This is an extinction-level threat." "Extinction level," I repeated, tasting the words. Catchy name. Very metal band. So let me get this straight. We're talking about some cosmic horror show that's got the entire galaxy running scared. And the solution is, what? Hide under a blanket and hope they go away? "The solution," Crix-9 said, his voice taking on that particular tone that suggested he was explaining something to a particularly slow child, "is strategic withdrawal. Every race has agreed to evacuate their core systems and regroup in the Andromeda staging area. It's the only logical response." "Every race except one," I pointed out. "Yes, well," he shifted uncomfortably. "Humanity's unique perspective on conflict resolution is well documented." Unique perspective. That was one way to put it. The galaxy had been very polite about humanity's tendency to look at impossible odds and respond with what could only be described as weaponized stubbornness. We were the species that had somehow managed to turn "this is suicide" into "hold my beer and watch this." "So the plan is to abandon trillions of sentient beings to get nommed by space locusts while everyone else plays hide-and-seek in another galaxy?" I asked. "It's not abandonment," Crix-9 protested. "It's strategic relocation. The Devourer Fleet has consumed entire star systems. They're not interested in negotiation or coexistence. They simply devour everything. The only winning move is not to play." I looked around the empty assembly hall, taking in the abandoned desks, the flickering holographic displays showing fleet movements, the general atmosphere of, "Nope, we're out of here." It was like watching the galaxy's most depressing fire drill. "Has anyone actually tried fighting these things?" I asked. "Of course. The Carillion Empire threw everything they had at a single Devourer ship. It absorbed their entire fleet and grew larger." "Okay, but did they try?" "The Zephyrian Collective attempted to create a quantum virus to disrupt their neural networks. The Devourers adapted and turned it into a weapon." "Right, but what about—" "The Ethereal Conclave tried to negotiate with them using advanced telepathic techniques. The Devourers consumed their thoughts and gained access to their collective consciousness." I held up a hand. Okay, I get it. Big scary monsters, lots of tentacles, probably bad breath. But here's the thing, Crix, and I say this with all due respect to your species' legendary strategic acumen. Running away is still running away, no matter how many fancy words you wrap it in. The Volthani's mandibles clicked in what I'd learned to recognize as extreme agitation. "Captain Reeves, perhaps you fail to understand the scale of this threat. The Devourer Fleet has consumed 17 major civilizations. Their biomass grows exponentially with each world they take. This isn't a battle, it's an apocalypse." "Apocalypse," I mused. You know, that's a funny word. Comes from ancient Greek, means revelation or unveiling. Makes you think, doesn't it? I fail to see how etymology is relevant to our current predicament. It's relevant because maybe this isn't the end of the story. Maybe it's just the part where we figure out what we're actually made of. Before Crix-9 could respond, another voice cut through the air. "Oh, for the love of... Danny, please tell me you're not about to do something catastrophically stupid." I turned to see Admiral Patricia Patty Kowalski striding across the chamber, her expression suggesting she'd already figured out exactly what I was thinking, and was having serious second thoughts about the entire human species.
"Patty!"
Just the person I wanted to see. "Quick question. How's our fleet looking these days?" "Compared to what?"
"The Devourer Fleet?"
We might as well be throwing paper airplanes at a hurricane.
That's not what I asked. She sighed, the sound carrying the weight of someone who'd spent too many years dealing with human officers and their particular brand of insanity. We've got maybe 200 ships of various classes. The Indomitable is still our flagship, and she's got more firepower than half the evacuating fleets combined. Our Marines are itching for a fight, and our pilots are, well, they're pilots. But Danny, we're talking about facing down millions of hostile entities with tech that makes our best stuff look like stone knives and bearskins.
Millions of hostile entities, I repeated,
all clustered together in a nice, convenient fleet formation. Yes, that's generally how invasion forces work. And they're heading straight for inhabited systems. That's what Devourer Fleet implies, yes. I grinned.
Patty, my dear, pessimistic friend, I think you're missing the obvious solution here. Which is, we blow them up. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that occurs when everyone present is trying to decide whether they've just witnessed genius or complete mental breakdown. Crix-9's compound eyes were doing that thing where they moved independently of each other, which I'd learned meant he was either having a seizure or processing something that violated his understanding of reality. Captain Reeves, he said finally, you cannot possibly be suggesting that humanity intends to face the Devourer Fleet alone.
Oh, I'm not suggesting it, I said cheerfully.
I'm flat out stating it.
Humanity doesn't abandon people. It's kind of our thing.
We're stubborn like that.
It's suicide, Patty said flatly.
Maybe, but it's the kind of suicide that might actually work.
How is suicide supposed to work?
Well, for starters, nobody expects it.
When was the last time you saw someone charge directly at an extinction-level threat while screaming war cries and playing death metal?
Never, because it's insane.
Exactly.
The Devourers have probably consumed 17 civilizations that all did the smart, logical thing.
They've probably developed countermeasures for every rational military strategy in the galaxy. But have they developed countermeasures for complete, balls-to-the-wall, human-grade stupidity?
Patty opened her mouth to respond, then closed it.
Then opened it again.
Then closed it again.
It was like watching someone try to compute the square root of -1.
That's, she began. Crazy, I suggested.
I was going to say so stupid it might actually work, but yes, crazy covers it. Crix-9 was making a sound that I'd learned was the Volthani equivalent of hyperventilation.
This is madness.
The Devourer Fleet will simply adapt to whatever strategy you employ.
They always do. Sure, they'll adapt.
But here's the thing about adaptation. It takes time.
And while they're busy trying to figure out what the hell we're doing, we'll be doing something else equally stupid and unexpected.
Such as? I paused, realizing I hadn't actually thought that far ahead.
We'll improvise. Humans are good at that. You're going to improvise against an extinction-level threat? We improvised against the Carillion Empire when they tried to enslave us.
We improvised against the Zephyrian Collective when they tried to enlighten us. We improvised against the Ethereal Conclave when they tried to elevate us to a higher plane of existence.
Turns out we're really good at improvising against things that want to fundamentally change or destroy us.
Those were individual conflicts, Crix-9 protested.
This is different. Yeah, it's bigger, which means we get to be more creative.
Admiral Kowalski was giving me that look again, the one that suggested she was trying to decide whether to have me committed or promoted.
Danny, assuming for a moment that you're not having a complete psychological break, what exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing we do what humans do best. We find the thing that everyone says is impossible, and we do it anyway.
But first, we need to know what we're dealing with.
Crix, you've got access to all the intelligence reports on these Devourer things, right? Of course, but... Great. Patty, get me a complete readout on our current military assets.
Everything.
Ships, personnel, weapons, weird experimental tech that we're not supposed to talk about.
Danny. And I want to talk to every species military attaché who's still in the system. If we're going to do this, we need to know what resources we can realistically expect. You're serious about this, Patty said. It wasn't a question.
Dead serious. Look, I know how this sounds. Trust me, I'm aware of the mathematical improbability of success.
But here's the thing. Every species in the galaxy has looked at this problem and concluded that the only solution is to run away and hope it goes away. Maybe that's the logical choice.
Maybe it's even the right choice. But it's not the human choice.
What's the human choice? Crix-9 asked.
I smiled.
We fight.
We fight because someone has to. We fight because running away means abandoning trillions of innocent people.
We fight because the alternative is letting these things turn the galaxy into their personal buffet. And we fight because, just maybe, we're too stupid to know when we're beaten.
That's not a strategy, Patty pointed out.
No, it's not. But it's a start. Chapter 2. The Art of Impossible Warfare. 3 hours later, I was standing in the war room of the Indomitable, surrounded by holographic displays showing what could only be described as the galaxy's most depressing intelligence briefing. The Devourer Fleet looked like someone had taken every nightmare about space monsters and cranked it up to 11. So, I said, studying the tactical displays, these things are basically living ships that eat other ships and get bigger? It's more complex than that, said Dr. Elizabeth Carter, our chief xenobiologist. She was one of those people who could make even the apocalypse sound like a fascinating research opportunity. Based on the data we've collected, the Devourer entities are a form of collective bioengineered organism. They don't just consume matter, they analyze it, break it down to its component elements, and integrate useful technologies into their own structure. So they're like cosmic piranhas with a PhD in engineering? That's actually not a terrible analogy, she admitted. They swarm, they devour, they adapt, and they reproduce. Each individual entity is roughly the size of a battleship, but they can merge into larger forms when necessary. How much larger? The largest recorded entity was approximately the size of a small moon. I felt a headache coming on. Of course it was. Because why would the universe give us a break? What about weaknesses? Please tell me these things have at least one exploitable weakness. That's complicated. Dr. Carter manipulated the display, showing detailed scans of devourer biology. They're incredibly resilient. Their hull structure is a hybrid of organic and technological components that can rapidly repair damage. They're immune to most forms of radiation and can survive in vacuum indefinitely. Their neural networks are distributed, so targeting a central brain is impossible. But, I prompted, because there had to be a but. There was always a but they're not invulnerable. They require a constant intake of energy to maintain their molecular cohesion. If you could somehow disrupt their energy absorption or force them to expend more energy than they can consume, they'd starve. I finished. Okay, that's something. What else? They're also highly dependent on their collective consciousness. They share information instantaneously across the entire fleet, which gives them incredible coordination but also creates potential vulnerabilities. Such as information overload. If you could flood their network with too much data too fast, it might cause system-wide disruption. I turned to Commander Harrison Beck, our tactical officer. Beck, what's your assessment? Beck was the kind of guy who looked at tactical problems the way other people looked at crossword puzzles. With grim determination, and the absolute certainty that there was a solution if you just thought about it hard enough. Honestly, Captain, it's like trying to figure out how to punch a hurricane. The scale is just beyond normal military thinking. But Dr. Carter's right about the energy requirements. These things are basically living fusion reactors. They need fuel, and they need a lot of it. What kind of fuel? Anything, really. Organic matter, metals, energy weapons fire, stellar radiation. They're not picky, but the bigger they get, the more they need. So if we could somehow make them grow really big, really fast, they'd need exponentially more fuel to maintain themselves, Beck said, catching on. It's theoretically possible to force them into an unsustainable growth cycle. Theoretically. Very theoretically. We'd need to feed them something that would cause rapid expansion but couldn't sustain them long term. And we'd need to do it on a massive scale. I was starting to get one of those ideas that usually ended with Patty yelling at me. What about our experimental weapons? The stuff we're not supposed to talk about? Beck and Dr. Carter exchanged glances. Captain, most of our experimental tech is classified beyond my clearance level, Beck said carefully. Which is why we're talking to someone with higher clearance, I said, hitting the intercom. Patty, get down to the war room, and bring Lieutenant Commander Reynolds with you. Reynolds, Danny, you know I can't. I know you can't talk about Project Pandora. I'm not asking you to talk about it. I'm asking you to listen to a hypothetical question about theoretical applications of speculative technology. There was a pause. I'll be right there. 5 minutes later, Admiral Kowalski entered the war room followed by a woman I'd only met once before. Lieutenant Commander Victoria Reynolds, the human military's most classified officer. She was responsible for projects so secret that even their code names were classified. Reynolds, I said, hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to rapidly expand the mass of a large biological entity, what would be the most efficient method? She raised an eyebrow. Hypothetically? Completely hypothetically. Well, hypothetically, if someone had access to a matter replication field generator, they could theoretically cause rapid cellular expansion in any organic target, hypothetically. And how big is this hypothetical generator? Hypothetically? About the size of a ship's torpedo. I felt that familiar tingle that meant I was about to do something that would either save the galaxy or get us all killed. Possibly both. And if someone were to, hypothetically, launch several of these devices into a swarm of spacefaring organisms? Hypothetically, those organisms would experience rapid, uncontrolled growth. They'd become larger, but also more unstable. Eventually, they'd require more energy than they could possibly consume, and would undergo catastrophic molecular collapse. How long would that take? Hypothetically? Depends on the size of the target and the number of replication fields, but probably anywhere from 6 to 12 hours. And during those 6 to 12 hours? They'd be very, very angry. I nodded. Patty, how many of these hypothetical devices do we have? Danny, I really can't. Hypothetically. She sighed. Hypothetically, we might have enough to target several dozen large entities. Several dozen out of millions, Beck pointed out. That's not exactly a game changer. No, but it's a start. What if we could get them to cluster together? Make them think they're under attack from multiple directions? They'd swarm, Dr. Carter said. It's their primary defensive behavior. When threatened, they merge into larger entities for increased firepower and protection. So if we hit them with everything we've got, they'd naturally cluster together into bigger, more vulnerable targets? Theoretically, yes. But Captain, you're talking about using our entire fleet as bait. The casualty rate would be horrific, I finished. Yeah, I know, but it might work. It might work, Beck agreed reluctantly. But it's still suicide. Even if we could force them into an unstable growth cycle, they'd take us down with them. Not if we weren't there. Everyone stared at me. Come again? Patty said. We hit them, we run. They chase us, we lead them somewhere useful, then we trigger the hypothetical devices and get the hell out of there. Where exactly would we lead them? Dr. Carter asked. I turned to look at the star charts displayed on the wall. Anyone know what's in the Kepler 442 system? Beck consulted his tactical display. Nothing much. A few uninhabited planets, some asteroid fields, and... Oh? There's a pulsar, Kepler 442b. It's been unstable for the past few thousand years. The stellar engineers keep meaning to fix it, but it's not a priority since there's no inhabited systems nearby. Define unstable. It's been building toward a massive energy discharge. When it goes off, it'll release more energy than most stars produce in a century. The radiation burst will sterilize everything within a dozen light years. And when is this discharge supposed to happen? Could be tomorrow, could be another 1,000 years. Pulsars are unpredictable. I smiled. What if we could make it predictable? Captain, Dr. Carter said slowly, you're not suggesting we weaponize a pulsar. I'm suggesting we give it a little push. Reynolds, hypothetically speaking, what would happen if someone were to detonate a few antimatter charges near an unstable stellar object? Hypothetically, that would be incredibly dangerous and probably trigger an immediate discharge. But it would work? It would work. Once. Then everyone involved would be dead. Everyone in the immediate area, I corrected. What's the safe distance from a pulsar discharge? About 15 light years, Beck said. And how fast can the Indomitable travel? With the experimental FTL drive? Maybe 50 times the speed of light if we push it. I did some quick mental math. So if we could get the Devourer Fleet to follow us to the pulsar, trigger the hypothetical replication devices, wait for them to go critical, then trigger the pulsar discharge, we'd have maybe 30 minutes to get to safe distance. That's cutting it incredibly close, Patty said. It's also our only shot at taking out the entire fleet at once. Assuming they follow us, Beck pointed out. Oh, they'll follow us. We're going to be the most annoying target they've ever encountered. And if they don't cluster together the way we expect, then we improvise. And if the replication devices don't work as planned, we improvise. And if the pulsar doesn't discharge when we want it to, we improvise. And if our FTL drive fails, then we die heroically and become a cautionary tale about the dangers of human overconfidence. The room fell silent. I could practically hear everyone's mental gears turning as they processed the sheer audacity of what I was suggesting. It's insane, Patty said finally. Completely insane, Beck agreed. Suicidally insane, Dr. Carter added. Hypothetically insane, Reynolds concluded. But it might work, I said. It might work, they all agreed, with varying degrees of enthusiasm. All right then, I said. Let's go save the galaxy. Chapter 3. The Most Polite Rejection in Galactic History. The response from the Galactic Council was delivered in person by Ambassador Crix 9, who looked like he'd been asked to explain quantum physics to a particularly dense houseplant. Captain Reeves,
he began, consulting a formal document that was probably longer than most species' constitutions. The Galactic Council has reviewed your proposal for Operation Cosmic Stupidity.
That's not what I called it, I protested. You called it Operation Let's See What Happens When We Poke the Apocalypse with a Stick. Right, which is much more professional. The Council has unanimously voted to reject your proposal on the grounds that it represents an unacceptable risk to galactic security, violates 17 interstellar treaties, and, quote, appears to have been conceived by someone who has suffered severe head trauma. I nodded thoughtfully.
So that's a no?
That's a no.
Did they offer any constructive alternatives? They suggested that humanity might consider joining the general evacuation to Andromeda, where we could pursue more rational approaches to conflict resolution. And by rational approaches, they mean hiding behind a really big rock and hoping the Devourer Fleet gets bored and goes away. I see. I leaned back in my chair, studying the Volthani ambassador. Crix, can I ask you something? Of course. How many species have tried hiding behind really big rocks when faced with an extinction-level threat? His mandibles clicked nervously.
That's not precisely how the strategy was described. How many? 17. And how many of those species are still around? That's different.
The Devourer Fleet is unprecedented. Crix, my friend, I'm going to let you in on a little secret about humanity. We're not good at hiding behind rocks. We're not good at rational approaches to conflict resolution. We're not even particularly good at self-preservation. But we are spectacularly good at looking at impossible situations and saying, hold my beer. I'm not familiar with that expression. It means we're about to do something really stupid and probably dangerous, but we're going to do it anyway because someone has to. The ambassador's compound eyes shifted nervously. Captain, please understand, this isn't a matter of courage or determination. The mathematical probability of success is so low as to be negligible. Even if your plan worked perfectly, the chance of survival is non-zero. I interrupted, which is better than the alternative. What alternative? Letting these things turn the galaxy into their personal all-you-can-eat buffet, while we hide in another galaxy and pretend it's not our problem. It's not surrender, Crix 9 protested. It's strategic repositioning. It's surrender with better marketing. Before he could respond, Admiral Kowalski entered the room, carrying a datapad and wearing the expression of someone who'd just received very interesting news. Danny, we've got updates from the outer sensor networks. The Devourer Fleet has accelerated their approach. They'll reach the Kepler system in approximately 18 hours. 18 hours? I sat up straighter. That's ahead of schedule. Way ahead of schedule. They're moving faster than anyone predicted. Why? Unknown. But Captain, there's something else. We're picking up communications from the evacuating fleets. They're having problems. What kind of problems? The kind where the Devourer Fleet isn't just heading for inhabited systems. They're actively hunting down the evacuation fleets. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. They're tracking the evacuations? It looks that way. 3 separate fleets have reported contact with advanced scout entities. They're being herded. Herded? Toward the Andromeda staging area. It's like the Devourers want all the evacuating species in one place. I looked at Crix 9, whose compound eyes were doing that independent motion thing again. Crix, you want to explain how a bunch of mindless space monsters know about our evacuation plans? They're not mindless, he said quietly. The reports we've received suggest they're highly intelligent. They study their prey, learn their patterns, anticipate their movements. So they're smart enough to know that everyone's running away to the same place? It would appear so. Which means the evacuation isn't actually an evacuation. It's a trap. That's impossible. The Andromeda staging area is heavily defended. We have installations, supply depots, defensive platforms, all in one convenient location, I pointed out. Crix, how many people are we talking about here? Total evacuees? Approximately 2 trillion sentient beings from over 300 species. 2 trillion. I let that number sink in. And they're all being herded toward a single location that these things already know about. Captain Reeves, you can't possibly be suggesting that the entire galactic evacuation is a trap. I'm not suggesting it. I'm stating it. These Devourer things aren't just random space monsters. They're smart, they're organized, and they're playing a game that's about 12 moves ahead of everyone else. Patty was studying her datapad with the intensity of someone trying to solve a particularly nasty puzzle. Danny, if you're right, then the evacuation fleets are heading straight into the worst possible scenario. Which is? 2 trillion people clustered together with minimal defenses, surrounded by the largest concentration of devourer entities in galactic history. It gets worse, I said, the pieces clicking together in my mind. Think about it. What happens when the devourers consume 2 trillion people and all their technology? They grow exponentially, Dr. Carter said from the doorway. She'd been listening, and her face had gone pale. Captain, if they absorbed that much biomass and technology, they'd become unstoppable, I finished. Not just in this galaxy, but everywhere. They'd have the resources to spread to other galaxies, other dimensions, wherever they wanted to go. So the evacuation isn't just a trap, Patty said grimly. It's a feeding frenzy designed to give them enough power to consume the entire universe. Which brings us back to our original problem, I said. Except now we know that hiding behind a rock isn't just cowardly, it's suicidal. Crix 9 was making that hyperventilating sound again. This is catastrophic. We have to warn the evacuation fleets. They have to change course, scatter, find alternative destinations. Where? I asked. You said it yourself, these things are smart. They've been studying galactic behavior for who knows how long. They probably know about every fallback position, every hidden base, every emergency protocol in the book. Then what do you suggest? I suggest we go back to my original plan, except now we're not just trying to save the galaxy, we're trying to save the universe. Captain, Dr. Carter said, even if your plan works, even if we manage to destroy the Devourer Fleet, there's still the matter of the evacuating populations. They'll be stranded in deep space with limited supplies. Not if we can clear a path for them to return home. Return home to what? Half the galaxy's inhabited systems are already compromised. Then we uncompromise them. How? The same way we deal with everything else. We improvise. I stood up, feeling that familiar surge of determination that usually preceded really terrible decisions. Crix, I need you to send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them we've discovered that the evacuation is a trap, that hiding in Andromeda will result in universal extinction, and that humanity is implementing an alternative solution. What alternative solution? We're going to destroy the Devourer Fleet, destabilize their command structure, and buy enough time for the evacuation fleets to scatter and find actual safety. And if you fail? Then we fail spectacularly, and at least we'll have tried. Captain Reeves, I must protest. Protest noted and filed under things to worry about later. Patty, what's our current fleet status? 217 ships, fully crewed and ready for combat. The Indomitable is our flagship, supported by 12 heavy cruisers, 37 destroyers, and the rest are a mix of frigates, patrol boats, and support vessels. Against millions of Devourer entities. Against millions of Devourer entities, she confirmed. I've seen worse odds. When? I'm sure I have. Reynolds, what's our supply situation for the hypothetical devices? We have approximately 43 hypothetical devices ready for deployment. Against millions of targets. Against millions of targets, she confirmed. Well, we'll just have to make them count. Captain, Beck said. I've been running tactical simulations based on the new timeline. If we're going to intercept the Devourer Fleet before they reach the evacuation routes, we need to leave within the next 4 hours. 4 hours to prepare for the most insane military operation in galactic history, I mused. Should be plenty of time. Captain Reeves, Crix 9 said. I feel compelled to point out that what you're proposing is still suicide. The odds haven't improved simply because the situation has gotten worse. Crix, let me explain something about human psychology. The worse the situation gets, the more creative we become. It's like we're hardwired to respond to impossible odds by finding increasingly ridiculous ways to overcome them. That's not a survival strategy. No, it's something better. It's a living strategy. See, other species focus on survival, not dying, preserving their civilization, maintaining the status quo. Humans focus on living, exploring, creating, growing, pushing boundaries. When faced with extinction, most species ask, how do we avoid dying? Humans ask, how do we turn this into an adventure? That's insane. That's the point. Sanity is predictable. The Devourer Fleet has countered every sane response in galactic history. But insanity? That's harder to plan for. I walked over to the tactical display showing the approaching Devourer Fleet. Millions of hostile entities, moving with purpose and intelligence toward their ultimate goal of consuming everything in existence. It was, objectively speaking, the most terrifying sight in the universe. I couldn't help but smile. All right, people, I said, turning back to the group. We've got 4 hours to prepare for the most important battle in the history of, well, everything.
Patty, get the fleet ready for immediate departure.
Beck, I want tactical scenarios for every possible engagement pattern.
Dr. Carter, I need to know everything about Devourer biology that might be useful in a fight.
Reynolds, prepare all the hypothetical devices for deployment.
And me? Crix-9 asked. You get to send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them that in 4 hours the human fleet will engage the Devourer Fleet in the Kepler system. Tell them that if they want to watch the universe's last stand, they should tune in to the tactical frequencies.
You want them to watch? I want them to witness. Because when this is over, when we've either saved the galaxy or died trying, I want there to be a record of what happened when one species decided that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the odds.
And if you lose? Then at least we'll lose doing something that matters. Crix-9 stared at me for a long moment, his compound eyes processing something that clearly didn't fit into his understanding of rational behavior. Finally, he nodded.
I will deliver your message, Captain Reeves. And for what it's worth, good luck.
Thanks, Crix. We're going to need it.
Chapter 4. The Fleet That Laughed at Death. The Indomitable's bridge was a study in controlled chaos. Officers moved with practiced efficiency, their voices calm and professional despite the fact that we were about to attempt something that would have made the ancient gods of war pause and reconsider their life choices.
Fleet status report, I called out, settling into the captain's chair. All ships report ready for immediate departure, came the response from Lieutenant Commander Alexandra Alex Voss, our communications officer. She had the kind of steady voice that could make "the ship is exploding" sound like a weather report.
Excellent. What's our ETA to the intercept point?
Approximately 3 hours at maximum burn, replied Navigator Torres from his station.
The Devourer fleet is moving faster than projected, but we should reach the outer edge of the Kepler system before they do.
Should, I repeated.
I love it when our survival depends on the word should. Captain, Beck said from the tactical station, I've been analyzing the formation patterns of the Devourer fleet. They're not moving randomly. There's a definite structure to their approach.
What kind of structure? It's like, imagine a fishing net made of living warships. They're spread out to cover maximum area, but they can rapidly compress into concentrated attack formations.
It's actually quite elegant.
Beck, did you just compliment our impending doom? From a tactical perspective, it's impressive. From a survival perspective, it's terrifying.
I turned to Dr. Carter, who was hunched over a scientific workstation that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought regular computers weren't complicated enough.
Carter, please tell me you found something useful in all that biological data.
Actually, yes. The Devourer entities have one significant weakness that no one's been able to exploit.
Which is? They're obsessed with efficiency. Every action they take is designed to maximize resource acquisition while minimizing energy expenditure. They don't waste time on unnecessary activities. So they're cosmic accountants? In a way, yes. They calculate the most efficient approach to consuming their target, then execute that plan with ruthless precision.
And that's a weakness how? Because efficiency is predictable. If we can make ourselves an irresistibly inefficient target, they'll be forced to respond in ways that go against their nature. I felt that familiar tingle of an insane idea taking shape.
Define irresistibly inefficient. Well, hypothetically, if a small force were to attack a much larger force in a completely illogical manner, the Devourers would have to respond. They can't ignore a direct threat, even if it's suicidal.
But they'd respond efficiently? Exactly. They'd send the minimum force necessary to eliminate the threat, keeping the majority of their fleet focused on their primary objective. Unless the threat kept changing, kept doing unexpected things, kept forcing them to reassess and redeploy. Like if someone were to attack different parts of their fleet simultaneously while playing loud music and broadcasting insults. That would be highly inefficient from their perspective. They'd be forced to respond to each threat individually, breaking their formation and disrupting their coordination.
Carter, you beautiful genius. We're not going to fight the Devourer fleet. We're going to annoy them to death. That's not quite what I— No, it's perfect. We can't match their firepower, but we can absolutely match their capacity for irritation.
How many of our ships have high-powered communication arrays?
All of them, sir, Alex replied. Standard fleet configuration. Excellent. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to split the fleet into small groups, each one targeting a different section of the Devourer formation.
We'll hit them, broadcast the most obnoxious messages we can think of, then run away before they can respond effectively.
That's not a strategy, Beck protested. That's trolling.
It's military trolling. There's a difference.
What difference?
The explosions are bigger. Admiral Kowalski, who had been quietly reviewing tactical reports,
looked up with the expression of someone who had just realized she was trapped in a universe that had abandoned all pretense of sanity. "Danny," she said carefully, "are you seriously proposing that we defeat an extinction-level threat by annoying them?"
I'm proposing that we disrupt their tactical cohesion by forcing them to respond to multiple simultaneous threats in ways that violate their operational parameters. That's the same thing. It sounds more professional when you use big words. It's still insane. Patty, has sanity ever gotten us out of a tight spot? She considered this for a moment.
No, but it's kept us from getting into most of them. And where has that gotten us?
We're still here, facing down the apocalypse with a plan that involves weaponized rudeness. I'd say sanity is overrated.
"Captain," Torres called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council." "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a collection of alien faces that looked like they were attending the universe's most depressing funeral. Ambassador Crix 9 was front and center, his compound eyes even more agitated than usual.
"Captain Reeves," he began, "the Council has reviewed your updated assessment of the evacuation situation. Our analysts confirm that the Devourer Fleet appears to be herding the evacuation fleets toward predetermined locations." "I told you so," I said cheerfully.
"Yes, well, the Council has voted to implement emergency protocols. All evacuation fleets are being ordered to scatter and seek alternate refuge sites." "And how's that working out?" "Several fleets have reported being intercepted by Devourer scout entities. It appears they're being encouraged to maintain their original course." "Encouraged? The scouts aren't attacking. They're just there."
"Following the fleets, matching their course changes, maintaining a presence that suggests any deviation from the planned route would be inadvisable."
"So they're being escorted to their doom." That's a rather dramatic way to put it. Crix, dramatic is when you use excessive adjectives to describe your lunch. This is just accurate. The point is, Captain, that the evacuation strategy is no longer viable. The Council is reconsidering its position regarding your proposal."
"Which proposal? I've made so many."
"The one involving the destruction of the Devourer Fleet through, what did you call it? Weaponized stupidity?" "That's not what I... Never mind." "Yes, that proposal. The Council would like to know if you still believe your plan has a reasonable chance of success." "Define reasonable." "Better than zero." "Oh, definitely better than zero. I'd say our chances are at least carry the two. Yeah, probably better than zero."
"That's not particularly encouraging. Crix, let me put this in perspective. Right now, the galaxy's best minds have produced a plan that involves running away to a place where we'll all be conveniently clustered together for easy consumption."
"My plan involves picking a fight with something that could eat us all for breakfast. Which one sounds more reasonable to you?"
"Neither one sounds reasonable, exactly.
But one of them involves going down fighting, and the other involves going down whimpering."
"I know which one I prefer." There was a long pause as the assembled aliens conferred among themselves in what sounded like a dozen different languages, all of them expressing variations on the theme of "we are so screwed." Finally, Crix 9 spoke again.
"Captain Reeves, the Council has reached a decision. While we cannot officially sanction your mission, we will not actively oppose it. If you succeed, the galaxy will remember your sacrifice. If you fail..."
"If we fail, there won't be anyone left to remember anything."
"Yes, that's rather the point. Any last words of wisdom from the galaxy's collective intelligence?"
"Don't die."
"I'll take that under advisement." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in relative silence. I looked around at my crew, noting the mix of determination and barely controlled terror on their faces. "Well," I said, "that was inspiring." "Sir," Beck said, "we're approaching the outer edge of the Kepler system. Long-range sensors are picking up the Devourer Fleet's advanced scouts." "How many?"
"Approximately 50,000 entities, moving in standard reconnaissance formation."
50,000 scouts, I mused.
"That's a lot of scouts. That's more than our entire fleet." "True. But they're spread out, and they're not expecting us to be this stupid."
"Captain," Dr. Carter said, "I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the scout formations. They're not just observing, they're actively scanning the system." "Scanning for what?" "Unknown. But the energy patterns suggest they're looking for something specific." "Any idea what?" "Based on the frequency distributions, I'd guess they're mapping potential resources. They're cataloging everything in the system that could be useful."
"Including us?"
"Especially us."
I stood up, feeling the familiar weight of command settling on my shoulders.
"All right, people, this is it. We're about to engage an enemy that has consumed 17 civilizations and is actively planning to devour the universe. Our plan involves annoying them into making tactical errors while we shoot them with experimental weapons and try not to die. That's actually the plan? Torres asked. That's the plan. It's insane. It's human, I corrected. And sometimes that's the same thing. Captain, Alex said. Incoming transmission from the Defiant. Captain Murphy wants to know if we're really going to do this. I smiled. Tell Murphy that we're not just going to do this. We're going to do this in style. And remind him that whoever gets the most confirmed kills owes the rest of us drinks. That's not exactly standard military protocol, sir. Alex, we're about to attempt the most audacious military operation in galactic history. I think we can dispense with standard protocol. Aye, sir. Fleet-wide communication, I called out. This is Captain Reeves to all ships. In approximately 30 minutes, we're going to engage the Devourer Fleet in what military historians will probably call either the most brilliant tactical maneuver ever attempted or the most spectacular failure in human history. I paused, looking out at the stars ahead of us, where somewhere in the darkness, millions of hostile entities were approaching with the intent of consuming everything we held dear. I won't lie to you. The odds are astronomical. The enemy is overwhelming. The plan is insane, but we're human. And being human means looking at impossible odds and saying, yeah, but what if we try anyway? We're not doing this because we think we'll win. We're doing this because someone has to. Because the alternative is abandoning trillions of innocent people to become cosmic fast food. Because running away isn't a strategy, it's just a slower way to die. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to hit them hard, we're going to hit them fast, and we're going to hit them in ways they'll never expect. We're going to be so annoying, so unpredictable, so absolutely ridiculous, that they'll have no choice but to respond to us, instead of focusing on their real objective. And when they do respond, when they turn their attention to us, we're going to show them what happens when you threaten something that humans care about. All ships, prepare for combat. Let's go save the universe. The response came back from 217 ships, 217 crews, 217 groups of humans who had looked at the apocalypse and decided to thumb their noses at it. Aye, Captain. Let's go save the universe. Chapter 5. The Art of Cosmic Irritation. The first phase of what would later be known as the Battle of Kepler 442 began not with a thunderous charge or a heroic speech, but with the Indomitable's communications array broadcasting a message that would have made ancient Earth's greatest trolls weep with pride. Attention, Devourer Fleet, I announced over the open channel. This is Captain Daniel Reeves of the Human Defense Force. We're here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and we're all out of bubblegum. Sir, Alex said quietly, I'm not sure they'll understand that reference. That's the point. Nothing confuses an efficiency-obsessed hive mind like cultural references they can't process. The response was immediate and exactly what Dr. Carter had predicted. The Devourer scout formations began to shift, their orderly reconnaissance patterns disrupted as they tried to analyze this unexpected development. Captain, Beck reported. They're reallocating approximately 12,000 entities to intercept us. The rest are maintaining their original course. Excellent. That means we're already winning. How are we winning? They're sending 12,000 ships to kill us. They're sending 12,000 ships to kill 200 of us. From an efficiency standpoint, that's terrible resource allocation. From a survival standpoint, it's also terrible for us. Details, I said, watching the tactical display as the Devourer entities began to converge on our position. Fleet-wide communication. All ships, execute Pattern Delta. Let's show them what human creativity looks like. Pattern Delta was one of those tactical maneuvers that looked brilliant on paper and suicidal in practice. The fleet split into 17 separate groups, each one heading toward a different section of the Devourer formation at maximum speed, while broadcasting increasingly absurd messages. The Defiant led Group Alpha, with Captain Murphy broadcasting what appeared to be a recipe for some kind of Earth casserole. The Relentless headed Group Beta, transmitting the complete lyrics to Never Gonna Give You Up in 17 different languages. The Tenacious was broadcasting a detailed critique of Devourer Fleet formations, complete with suggestions for improvement. The effect was immediate and chaos-inducing. The Devourer entities, faced with multiple simultaneous threats that made no logical sense, began to respond in ways that violated their own operational parameters. Captain, Dr. Carter said, her voice filled with scientific fascination. Their coordination is breaking down. They're trying to respond to each threat individually instead of maintaining fleet cohesion. How badly? They're making mistakes. Small ones, but mistakes nonetheless. They're overcorrecting, second-guessing their own tactical decisions.
Perfect. Alex, patch me through to the entire fleet. You're on, sir. All ships, this is the captain. Phase 1 is working beautifully. They're confused, they're irritated, and they're making errors. Now we move to Phase 2. All groups, begin evasive maneuvers. Make them chase you, but don't let them catch you. We want them angry, not satisfied. The next 20 minutes were a masterclass in organized chaos. Human ships darted through the Devourer formation like hyperactive mosquitoes, never staying in one place long enough to be caught, but always staying visible enough to be annoying. Every time a group of Devourer entities moved to intercept one of our ships, that ship would dart away, while another group would pop up somewhere else, broadcasting increasingly ridiculous messages. Captain, Torres reported. The Audacious is requesting permission to broadcast their interpretation of Shakespeare's greatest hits. Granted. Tell them to focus on the tragedies. The irony should be delicious. Sir, the Intrepid wants to know if they can start broadcasting human music. What kind of music? Death metal, sir. Specifically a song called Consumed by the Void. I love it. Approved. The Devourer Fleet's response was becoming increasingly erratic. What had started as a coordinated pursuit had devolved into a chaotic swarm of entities chasing individual human ships across the star system, while trying to decode an endless stream of cultural references, culinary instructions, and artistic performances. Captain, Beck said, I'm detecting increased energy signatures from the Devourer entities. They're getting agitated. How agitated? They're starting to merge into larger forms. It looks like they're preparing for a more aggressive response. Excellent. That means we're moving into Phase 3 ahead of schedule. Phase 3? The part where we make them really angry. I turned to Reynolds, who was monitoring the deployment status of our hypothetical weapons. Reynolds, how are our special packages looking? All 43 devices are armed and ready for deployment, sir. We just need to get within effective range, which is approximately 10,000 kilometers. We need to be close enough for the replication fields to achieve target lock on individual entities. 10,000 kilometers, I repeated. That's basically point-blank range in space combat. Yes, sir. It's also well within their optimal weapons range. Of course it is, because why would the universe make anything easy? Captain, Dr. Carter said, I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the Devourer formation. I think they're preparing for a coordinated attack. How coordinated? They're synchronizing their energy signatures. If they all fire simultaneously, they'll turn us into cosmic dust, I finished. How long do we have? Maybe 5 minutes? 5 minutes to get within 10,000 kilometers of hostile entities that are about to unleash enough firepower to sterilize a planet, I mused. I've had worse deadlines. When? I'm sure I have. Fleet-wide communication. You're on, sir. All ships, this is the captain. The enemy is preparing for a coordinated attack. This is exactly what we wanted. All groups, execute Pattern Omega. It's time to get up close and personal. Pattern Omega was the kind of tactical maneuver that military academies would probably use as an example of what not to do. Every ship in the fleet accelerated directly toward the largest concentrations of Devourer entities, abandoning all pretense of evasion or subtlety. Captain, Beck said, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. They're locking onto us. All of them. Simultaneously. How many? Approximately 47,000 entities are targeting our fleet. 47,000 versus 217. I said. I like our odds. Sir, those odds are terrible. Beck, you're thinking like a mathematician. Think like a human. How does a human think about odds like that? We don't think about the odds. We think about the objective. The Indomitable shuddered as the first wave of Devourer energy weapons struck our shields. The lights dimmed, systems sparked, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sound of emergency alarms. Shields at 60%, Torres reported. Excellent, that means we're still alive. For now. Reynolds, how close are we to deployment range? 15,000 kilometers and closing. We need to get closer. Captain, Alex said. Incoming transmission from the Defiant. Captain Murphy reports that his ship is taking heavy damage, but he's locked onto a cluster of merged entities. Tell Murphy to deploy his packages and then get the hell out of there. Aye, sir. On the tactical display, I watched as the Defiant launched 3 of the hypothetical devices directly into the center of a massive Devourer formation. The devices looked like ordinary torpedoes, but their effect was anything but ordinary. The moment they made contact with the Devourer entities, the replication fields activated. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The targeted entities began to expand rapidly, their biomass doubling, then tripling, then growing exponentially. It's working, Dr. Carter said, her voice filled with excitement.
The replication fields are forcing uncontrolled cellular expansion. The entities are growing faster than they can adapt.
How fast? At current rates, they'll reach critical mass in approximately 8 hours. 8 hours? I stared at the display.
That's too long. We need them to go critical faster. Captain, Reynolds said, we could increase the replication field intensity, but that would require multiple devices targeting the same entity. Do it. All ships, focus your deployments on the largest entity clusters. We need to force rapid growth in as many of them as possible. The next few minutes were a blur of explosions, energy beams, and rapidly expanding space monsters. Human ships darted through the Devourer formation, launching their hypothetical weapons at anything large enough to be a worthwhile target. The Relentless scored a direct hit on a cluster of merged entities that was roughly the size of a small city. The replication field caused it to expand to the size of a small moon within minutes. The Tenacious managed to tag 3 separate formations simultaneously, creating a chain reaction of growth that spread through an entire section of the Devourer Fleet. The Audacious pulled off the most spectacular deployment of the battle, launching all 6 of its devices into a single massive entity that was already the size of a large asteroid. The combined replication fields caused it to expand so rapidly that it began to consume smaller entities around it, incorporating their mass into its own exponentially growing bulk. Captain, Beck said, the enlarged entities are becoming unstable. They're requiring massive amounts of energy to maintain cellular cohesion. And they're getting that energy from each other. They're cannibalizing their own fleet. I smiled. Perfect. How many devices have we deployed? 37, sir. We have 6 remaining. Save them for the final phase. All ships, begin withdrawal to safe distance. We don't want to be here when these things go critical. Captain, Dr. Carter said, I'm detecting something unusual. The enlarged entities aren't just growing randomly. They're trying to merge with each other. Is that bad? It's either very bad or very good. If they succeed in merging, they'll create a single entity so large that it will require more energy than the entire star system can provide. It will go critical almost immediately. And if they fail, they'll tear each other apart trying, which will also cause system-wide destabilization. So either way, we win. Either way, everything in this star system dies. Including us? Especially us. I looked at the tactical display, where the Devourer Fleet was now a chaotic mass of expanding, merging, and increasingly unstable entities. It was like watching a cosmic train wreck in slow motion. Fleet-wide communication, I said. All ships, this is the captain. Phase 4 is now in effect. We have approximately 6 hours before the enlarged entities reach critical mass. That gives us 6 hours to implement the final phase of our plan. Which is? Beck asked. We're going to make them follow us to the pulsar. How? The same way we got them to chase us in the first place. We're going to annoy them. Sir, Alex said, with respect, they're kind of busy right now trying not to explode. Which is exactly why this is the perfect time to get their attention. I turned to Reynolds. Reynolds, I need you to prepare our remaining 6 devices for a very special deployment. What kind of deployment? The kind that will make the enlarged entities so angry that they'll forget about their energy crisis and focus entirely on destroying us. How do we make cosmic horrors angry? By giving them something they can't have. Chapter 6. The Pulsar Gambit. The thing about pulsars is that they're incredibly predictable right up until the moment they're not. Kepler 442b had been building toward a massive energy discharge for millennia, and according to our stellar engineers, it could go off at any moment. Or it could wait another 1,000 years. Captain, Dr. Carter said, studying the readings from our long-range sensors. The pulsar is showing increased activity. The magnetic field fluctuations are becoming more frequent. Is that good or bad? It means we might not have to trigger the discharge manually. The star could go off on its own. When? Anywhere from 5 minutes to 500 years. I sighed. Why can't anything in this universe just come with a simple instruction manual? Because that would make our job too easy, Beck said from the tactical station. Captain, the enlarged Devourer entities are showing signs of critical instability. They're consuming each other at an accelerating rate. How long before they reach terminal mass? Based on current growth rates, approximately 4 hours. 4 hours to get them to follow us to the pulsar, trigger the discharge, and get to safe distance. I did some quick mental calculations. That's cutting it very close. It gets worse, Torres said. The enlarged entities are emitting massive amounts of gravitational distortion. They're starting to affect local spacetime. Meaning? meaning that FTL travel is becoming increasingly difficult. If we wait much longer, we might not be able to reach escape velocity. Of course, because why would the universe make anything easy? I turned to Reynolds. Reynolds, tell me you have good news about our remaining devices. I have news, sir. Whether it's good depends on your definition of good. I'll take it. The 6 remaining devices can be configured for delayed activation. We could deploy them near the pulsar and trigger them remotely when the enlarged entities arrive. That's actually not terrible. What's the catch? The catch is that someone has to stay behind to trigger the detonation. The activation signal won't travel faster than light, so we'd need a ship within the blast radius to ensure proper timing. How large is the blast radius? Approximately 3 light years. I felt a familiar chill. So whoever triggers the devices dies, Reynolds finished. Almost certainly. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems and the occasional beep of monitoring equipment. I looked around at my crew, noting the expressions of grim determination on their faces. Well, I said finally, that's not ideal. No, sir, it's not. Any alternatives? We could try to time the activation to coincide with the pulsar discharge, Dr. Carter suggested. If we could predict the exact moment of stellar collapse, but we can't predict it. No, sir, we can't. So our options are, hope the pulsar goes off at exactly the right moment, or sacrifice a ship to trigger the devices manually. That's about the size of it. I stood up, pacing the small space behind the captain's chair. There has to be another way. What if we could make the enlarged entities trigger the devices themselves? How? By making them angry enough to follow us into the blast zone and then making them so frustrated that they attack everything in sight. Including the devices? Including the devices. Beck looked up from his tactical display. Captain, that's actually not completely insane. If we could get the enlarged entities to attack the devices, the resulting detonation would definitely trigger the pulsar discharge. And we'd still be in the blast zone, Torres pointed out. Not if we time it right. How long would it take to reach safe distance at maximum FTL? From the pulsar, about 37 minutes. And how long would it take the enlarged entities to reach the pulsar from their current position? At their current speed, approximately 90 minutes. So we'd have a 53-minute window to get them to the right location, trigger the devices, and get to safety. Assuming everything goes perfectly, Beck said. When does everything ever go perfectly? Never. So we plan for imperfection. What's the most likely thing to go wrong? The enlarged entities could decide not to follow us, Dr. Carter said. The pulsar could discharge early, Torres added. The devices could malfunction, Reynolds contributed. Our FTL drive could fail, Beck concluded. Right. So we need contingencies for all of those possibilities. Captain, Alex said, incoming transmission from the Defiant. Captain Murphy reports that his ship took significant damage during the last engagement. He's requesting permission to return to base for repairs. Denied. We need every ship for the final phase. Sir, with respect, the Defiant is barely holding together. One more hit and she's gone. I thought about this for a moment. Alex, get me Captain Murphy. The main screen flickered, revealing the scarred and smoke-stained bridge of the Defiant. Captain Murphy looked like he'd been through a blender, but his eyes were still sharp and determined. Danny, he said, I hope you've got a brilliant plan because we're running out of ship. Murphy, how's your FTL drive? Functional, barely. Why? Because I need someone to stay behind and trigger the devices when the enlarged entities reach the pulsar. Murphy's expression didn't change, but I could see him processing the implications. That's a suicide mission. Yes, it is. When do we leave? Murphy. Danny, don't. My ship is already dead. We're just keeping the corpse moving. If someone has to stay behind, it might as well be us. There might be another way. There's always another way. But sometimes the first way is the right way. I looked at my old friend, noting the way his crew was nodding in agreement behind him. They all knew what this meant, and they were all prepared to do it. Murphy, I can't order you to do this. You're not ordering me. I'm volunteering. Besides, someone needs to make sure those things don't get away. The blast will be significant. I figured. Danny, remember when we were kids and you used to say that someday we'd save the universe? Yeah. Well, today's the day. I felt something tight in my chest. Murphy. Danny, shut up and let me be a hero, okay? I've been waiting my whole life for this moment. All right. But Murphy, you're the bravest son of a bitch I've ever known. No, I'm the stupidest, but sometimes that's the same thing. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in contemplative silence. I looked around at my crew, seeing a mixture of admiration, sorrow, and determination on their faces. "All right," I said finally. "Here's the plan. We're going to lead the enlarged entities to the pulsar. Murphy and the Defiant will deploy our remaining devices around the star and wait for the entities to arrive. When they do, he'll trigger the devices, which will cause the pulsar to discharge. The resulting explosion will destroy the enlarged entities and, hopefully, disrupt the remaining Devourer Fleet." "And us?" Beck asked. "We'll be long gone by the time the fireworks start." "What about the rest of the Devourer Fleet? With their largest entities destroyed and their command structure disrupted, they should be vulnerable to conventional attack. The evacuating fleets will have a chance to regroup and counterattack." "That's a lot of assumptions," Torres pointed out. "It's a plan built on hope, desperation, and the kind of stupidity that only works in really extreme circumstances." "So, a typical human plan." "Exactly." I walked over to the tactical display, studying the positions of the enlarged entities. They were still consuming each other, still growing, still becoming increasingly unstable. In about 3 hours, they would reach critical mass and explode anyway. But if we could control when and where that explosion happened... "Fleet-wide communication," I said. "All ships except the Defiant. This is the captain. We are beginning the final phase of our mission. In approximately 2 hours, we will lead the enlarged Devourer entities to the Kepler 442 pulsar, where they will be destroyed by a controlled stellar discharge. This will likely disrupt the remaining Devourer fleet and give the evacuating populations a chance to survive." I paused, looking out at the stars where my friend was preparing to die for the sake of trillions of people he'd never met. "I want you all to know that what we're doing here today will be remembered as long as there are humans to remember it. We're not just fighting for our own survival. We're fighting for the survival of everything we hold dear. We're fighting for the idea that some things are worth dying for. We're fighting because someone has to. Because the alternative is unacceptable. Because we're human, and being human means looking at impossible odds and saying, 'Not today.' All ships, prepare for final approach. Let's go finish this." The response came back from 216 ships. Every vessel in the fleet except the Defiant, which was already moving toward its destiny at the pulsar. "Aye, Captain. Let's go finish this." Chapter 7. The Last Stand of the Defiant. The approach to the pulsar was both the most beautiful and most terrifying sight I'd ever witnessed. Kepler 442b was a massive stellar object, its surface writhing with magnetic storms and energy discharges that painted the surrounding space in shades of electric blue and violent purple. It was like watching a god having a temper tantrum. "Captain," Dr. Carter said, her voice filled with scientific awe, "the pulsar is showing unprecedented activity levels. I've never seen magnetic field fluctuations this intense." "Is that good or bad?" "It means the star is very close to discharge. The question is whether it will wait for us to get into position." "How close is very close?" "Anywhere from minutes to hours. The energy buildup is following an exponential curve, but stellar collapse is notoriously unpredictable." I looked at the tactical display, where the enlarged Devourer entities were following us in a chaotic swarm. They had grown to truly massive proportions. Some were the size of small planets. Others had merged into structures that defied conventional description. "Captain," Beck reported, "the enlarged entities are gaining on us. They're moving faster than projected." "How much faster?" "They'll reach the pulsar in 45 minutes instead of 90. That cuts our escape window in half. It gets worse. The gravitational distortions they're generating are affecting our FTL capabilities. We might not be able to reach escape velocity in time." I felt that familiar sensation of a plan falling apart in real time. "Options? We could abort the mission and try to escape now." "Which would accomplish what?" "We'd live. Temporarily. And the enlarged entities? They'd go critical in about 2 hours, probably taking half the star system with them. Which would accomplish nothing except delaying the inevitable." I turned to the communications station. "Alex, get me the Defiant." The screen flickered to life, showing Captain Murphy's bridge. It looked even worse than before. Sparks were flying from damaged consoles. Emergency lighting cast everything in red, and smoke was drifting through the air like fog. "Danny," Murphy said, "please tell me you're calling to chat about the weather." "I wish I was." "Murphy, the timeline's compressed. The enlarged entities will reach your position in 45 minutes instead of 90. "Well, that's inconvenient. How's it affect the plan?" "It means you'll have less time to deploy the devices, and we'll have less time to escape." "But it still works?" "Theoretically." "I love it when you say theoretically. It means we're about to do something spectacularly stupid.
Murphy, you can still abort. Take your ship and get out of there.
Danny, my ship is held together with hope and spare parts. We're not going anywhere. Besides, someone needs to make sure those things don't escape. The blast radius will be enormous, even if you're at maximum distance. I know. Murphy's voice was calm, accepting. Danny, I need you to promise me something. Anything. When this is over, when people tell the story of what happened here, make sure they know that the Defiant went down fighting. Murphy. And tell them that we were proud to serve with the finest crew in the galaxy, even if that crew was completely insane. I felt my throat tighten.
I'll tell them. Good. Now get out of here and let us do our job.
The transmission ended, leaving me staring at a blank screen. Around me, the bridge crew continued their work with professional efficiency, but I could see the emotion in their eyes.
Captain, Torres said quietly,
the enlarged entities are accelerating. They'll reach the pulsar in 38 minutes. And our escape window? If we leave now, we'll reach minimum safe distance with maybe 5 minutes to spare. And if we wait, we don't make it. I looked at the tactical display one more time, watching the swarm of massive, unstable entities bearing down on the pulsar where my oldest friend was preparing to die. All ships, I said, begin immediate withdrawal to safe distance. Maximum burn, emergency power to FTL drives. Aye, sir. As the Indomitable began to accelerate away from the pulsar, I kept my eyes on the tactical display, watching the Defiance icon moving into position near the star. Murphy was deploying the devices in a careful pattern around the pulsar, each one positioned to maximize the destructive effect when triggered. Captain, Dr. Carter said, I'm detecting massive energy spikes from the enlarged entities. They're becoming increasingly unstable. How unstable? Some of them are already beginning to fragment. The cellular expansion has reached the point where molecular cohesion is breaking down. So they're going to explode anyway? Yes, but not in a controlled manner. If they go critical before reaching the pulsar, the explosion could send fragments throughout the system. Fragments that would still be hostile? Potentially, yes. The Devourer biology is designed to survive extreme conditions. Even small fragments could regenerate given time and resources. So we need them to reach the pulsar intact. Which means we need them to reach it soon, before they fragment naturally. I watched the countdown timer on the tactical display. 32 minutes until the enlarged entities reached the pulsar. 28 minutes until we reached minimum safe distance. Alex, open a channel to the Defiant. Channel open, sir. Murphy, this is Danny. The entities are becoming unstable. You need to trigger the devices the moment they enter the blast zone, whether they're in optimal position or not. Understood. Danny, I'm reading massive energy buildup from the pulsar itself. This thing is ready to blow. How ready? Put it this way. I'm surprised it hasn't gone off already. That's actually good news. The more unstable the star is, the easier it will be to trigger the discharge. Yeah, well, let's hope it waits for us to get ready. Murphy, once you trigger those devices, you'll have maybe 30 seconds before the pulsar goes critical. 30 seconds, Murphy repeated. That's not much time. It's enough time to get clear if you start moving the moment you hit the trigger. Danny, we both know this ship isn't going anywhere. But that's okay. We came here to do a job, and we're going to do it. Murphy. Danny, stop. I need you to focus on getting your people to safety. That's your job now. The channel closed, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the terrible certainty that I was about to lose one of the best friends I'd ever had. Captain, Beck said, the enlarged entities are entering the pulsar's gravity well. They're being pulled toward the star. Good. The gravitational pull should keep them from fragmenting until they reach the trigger point. Sir, we're approaching minimum safe distance. If we're going to escape, we need to jump to FTL now. I looked at the tactical display one more time. The Defiant was a tiny dot near the massive pulsar, surrounded by 6 even tinier dots representing the devices. The enlarged entities were a swarm of massive contacts racing toward what would hopefully be their destruction. All ships, prepare for FTL jump on my mark. Aye, sir. Captain, Alex said. Final transmission from the Defiant. Put it through. Murphy's voice came through the speakers, calm and clear despite the chaos I could hear in the background. All ships, this is Captain Murphy of the Defiant. The enlarged entities are entering the trigger zone. I'm initiating device activation in 10 seconds. A pause. It's been an honor serving with you all. Tell the galaxy that humans don't run from a fight. Another pause. Danny, thanks for letting me be part of something that mattered. All ships, jump to FTL now. The universe twisted around us as the Indomitable entered faster than light travel. The stars became streaks of light and the tactical display went blank as we outran our own sensor signals. For 37 minutes, we traveled through hyperspace in silence. No one spoke. No one moved. We all knew what was happening behind us, and we all knew there was nothing we could do but wait. When we finally dropped back into normal space, we were 15 light-years from the Kepler 442 system. The first thing I did was order a sensor sweep of our former position. What we found was nothing. Where the Kepler 442 system used to be, there was now an expanding sphere of high-energy radiation and exotic matter. The pulsar had discharged with such violence that it had sterilized everything within a dozen light-years. The enlarged entities, the remaining Devourer Fleet, the planets, the asteroids, everything was gone. "Captain," Dr. Carter said, her voice filled with awe. The energy output was approximately 10,000 times greater than predicted. The pulsar didn't just discharge, it went supernova. And the Devourer Fleet? Completely destroyed. Nothing could have survived that level of radiation. Are you sure? Captain, that explosion was visible from other galaxies. Nothing survived. I slumped back in my chair, feeling a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and profound sadness. We'd done it. We'd actually done it. The Devourer Fleet was gone, the galaxy was safe, and the evacuating populations could return home. But Murphy was gone too. And the Defiant, and everyone aboard her. "Captain," Alex said softly. "Incoming transmissions. Multiple sources. Put them through." The communications board lit up with signals from across the galaxy. Evacuation fleets reporting that the Devourer entities shadowing them had suddenly gone inert. Military commanders requesting confirmation that the threat was over. Civilian populations asking if it was safe to return home. And at the center of it all, a transmission from the Galactic Council. "Captain Reeves," came the familiar voice of Ambassador Crix 9. "Preliminary reports suggest that the Devourer Fleet has been neutralized. Can you confirm?" "Confirmed," I said. "The Devourer Fleet has been destroyed. The threat is over." "How?" "We blew up a star." There was a long pause. "You blew up a star?" "We destabilized a pulsar and used the resulting supernova to destroy the enlarged entities and the remaining Devourer Fleet." That's impossible." "No, it's just really difficult. And expensive." "Captain Reeves, the Council is requesting a full debriefing on your methods. What you've accomplished here will need to be studied, analyzed, and potentially replicated for future threats. I'll send you the reports. But Ambassador, make sure that when you write the history of this battle, you include the sacrifice of Captain Murphy and the crew of the Defiant. They're the ones who made it possible." "Of course. Captain, on behalf of the Galactic Council and the trillions of beings whose lives you've saved, thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We still have to clean up the mess." Epilogue: The universe's longest thank you, note. 6 months later, I was sitting in a bar on Earth, nursing a drink that was probably older than most civilizations, and reading what had to be the universe's longest thank you note. The Galactic Council had compiled testimonials from every species, every world, every individual who had been affected by the Devourer threat. It was a document that ran to several thousand pages and included poetry, artwork, scientific analyses, and what appeared to be a recipe for some kind of celebratory cake from the Alterian Collective. "Captain," Alex said, sliding into the seat across from me, "you look like someone who's thinking too hard." "Just reading fan mail," I said, gesturing at the data pad. "Did you know that there's a species called the Zephyrian Poets who have composed an epic ballad about our mission? It's apparently 97 verses long. Are you in it?" "Everyone's in it. Even Murphy gets his own verse." Alex's expression softened. "How are you holding up?" "Some days are better than others," I admitted. "It's strange, you know. We saved the universe, but it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like survival. Maybe that's what victory looks like for humans. We don't conquer, we endure, we adapt. We find a way to keep going even when everything seems hopeless." "Speaking of keeping going," I said, "what's the status on the reconstruction efforts?" "Ahead of schedule, actually. The evacuating populations are returning to their home systems faster than anyone predicted. And Captain, there's something else you should know." "What?" "The Council has voted to establish a new branch of galactic defense. They're calling it the Human Intervention Force." I raised an eyebrow. "They want us to be the galaxy's professional problem solvers?" "Apparently, your approach to impossible situations has gained a certain reputation. They figure that if another extinction-level threat emerges, they'll need someone crazy enough to fight it. And they want humans for the job? They want humans for the job." I laughed, a sound that felt good after months of grief and guilt. "I suppose it beats our old reputation as the galaxy's resident lunatics." "Danny, we were never lunatics. We were just creative. Is that what we're calling it? It's what the galaxy is calling it.
There's a new term in the galactic lexicon, human solution. It refers to any approach to a problem that involves ignoring conventional wisdom, embracing impossible odds, and succeeding through sheer stubborn determination.
That's actually not a bad definition. There's more. The Council is establishing the Murphy Institute for Advanced Tactical Studies. It's going to be a research facility dedicated to developing unconventional approaches to military problems. I felt something tight in my chest again. They're naming it after Murphy? They're naming it after all of them. Murphy, the crew of the Defiant, and everyone else who didn't make it home. The inscription over the entrance is going to read, "In memory of those who looked at impossible odds and said, 'Not today.'" He would have liked that. Yeah, he would have. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sunset through the bar's windows. Earth looked the same as it always had. Blue skies, white clouds, green forests stretching to the horizon. It was hard to believe that 6 months ago, all of this had been in danger of becoming cosmic fast food. "Alex," I said finally, "do you think we'll ever have to do something like that again?" "Probably. The universe has a way of throwing impossible problems at anyone stupid enough to solve them. And if we do, then we'll do what we always do. We'll look at the impossible odds. We'll come up with a plan that shouldn't work, and we'll somehow make it work anyway. Because we're human. Because we're human." I raised my glass in a toast. To the crew of the Defiant, to Captain Murphy, and to the universe's most stubborn species. To the universe's most stubborn species, Alex agreed, clinking her glass against mine. Outside, the sun set over a world that was still free, still alive, still stubbornly human. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the universe held its breath, waiting to see what impossible thing humanity would do next. Because that's what humans do. We look at impossible situations and say, "Hold my beer." We face extinction-level threats with weaponized stubbornness and accidentally save the universe through sheer, bloody-minded determination. We don't win because we're the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. We win because we're too stupid to know when we're beaten. And sometimes that's enough to save everything. The end.